every game is different, but oftentimes, a game three on the road they're up 2-0 can be extremely challenging.
Yeah.
What was key for you all in the first quarter? You guys delivered a punch, they threw one back,
Yeah.
and you guys were able to just. What was key there?
Yeah. We knew coming into tonight, we typically struggle with these games. Last year, we go down big in Memphis, game three. We lose game three in the Denver series. We lose game three in the Minnesota series by 40, and we lose game three in Indiana. So yeah, we really wanted to come out here and just put our best foot forward, like across the board, really play to our identity and like just see where we were, like give ourselves a chance. And I think in those games, like we veered from who we were throughout the course of the game.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is dominating the 2026 NBA playoffs right now. Every possession feels under control. Every move looks effortless. The pace never speeds him up, never knocks him off balance. But just 1 year ago, there was one game he couldn't win. Game 3, not once, not twice, over and over again. Different opponents, different arenas, same result. Memphis, Denver, Minnesota, Indiana. Game 3 kept slipping away. And that's what makes this run feel so strange. Because the version of Shai you're watching today does not look like a player who has a built-in weakness. He looks like the answer to every defensive scheme. He looks like the calmest player on the floor no matter the situation. So how do those two realities exist at the same time? How does a player who can control an entire playoff game suddenly lose control on one specific night of a series? And more importantly, what changed? Because this time, game 3 didn't break him. It didn't slow him down. It didn't turn into another collapse. This time it looked easy. And if you think that's just because he scored more or got hot or had a better matchup, you're missing the real story. Because what Shai fixed was never about scoring. But what if I told you this wasn't just bad luck? To understand why this matters, you have to understand what Game 3 actually is in the NBA playoffs. It's not just another game in the series. It's the first real pressure point. Game 1 can be a feel out. Game 2 is adjustments, but Game 3 is where momentum either locks in or completely flips. Especially when a team is up 2-0. That's when everything tightens, the crowd gets louder, the opponent gets desperate, the margin for error disappears, and for the Oklahoma City Thunder, that moment kept going wrong. You can see it in the pattern. They would come in confident, move the ball, play their style, then something shifts. The offense slows down, the spacing shrinks, the decisions get rushed, and suddenly the game is gone. It didn't matter who they were playing. The result felt the same, and here's the problem. When a pattern repeats like that, it stops feeling random. It starts feeling like something deeper. Because players at this level don't just forget how to play basketball for one specific game. Teams this good don't just collapse for no reason. There's always a trigger. And for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that trigger kept showing up at the worst possible time. You could see it in how defense is adjusted. More bodies in the paint, more help on drives, more pressure early in possessions. But here's the part nobody really talks about. Those adjustments weren't new. He had already seen them in Game 1. In Game 2, sometimes even in the regular season. So why did Game 3 feel different? Why did the same coverages suddenly become a problem? That's the question that matters. Because if you think it's just about defense, then the solution is simple. You shoot better, you attack faster, you make tougher shots. But that's not what happened. And that's why this problem lasted longer than anyone expected. Because it wasn't obvious, it didn't show up on a stat sheet. It didn't scream at you during highlights. It was quieter than that. More subtle and way more dangerous. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because when you look closer at those Game 3 losses, you start to notice something. It wasn't just that the shot stopped falling. It was that the team stopped looking like itself. The ball didn't move the same way. The spacing wasn't as sharp. The reads came a split second late. And for a player like Shai, who thrives on rhythm and control, that split second matters more than anything. It changes everything. It turns good decisions into forced ones. It turns patience into hesitation. And once that happens, the entire system starts to break down. Not because the defense figured him out, but because something inside the system shifted first. And if you've been watching closely, you probably felt it too. Those moments where everything just looks a little off, where the flow disappears, where the game speeds up just enough to pull you out of your comfort zone. That's where Game 3 lived for this team, and that's why it kept happening. Because until you understand that shift, you can't fix it. And if you're still here, you already know this isn't just about one game. It's about a pattern that defined how people saw this team. And more importantly, how they saw Shai. So the real question isn't why he struggled. The real question is why it took so long to see what was actually causing it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It didn't just happen once, it kept happening. Different teams, same result, Memphis. A game that started with pace and confidence, then slowly unraveled. The ball stopped popping, drives turned into crowds. Possessions ended late in the clock with tough looks that never had a chance. Denver, a team built to punish hesitation. Every time the offense slowed down, every time the spacing tightened, they were ready. One extra help defender, one more body in the lane. And suddenly, what looked like a clean drive became a trap. Minnesota, that one hurt the most. Not just because they lost, but because of how they lost. The gap wasn't small, it wasn't a last second miss. It was a blowout, a complete breakdown of rhythm, confidence, and identity. Three different defenses, three different styles, but the same pattern kept showing up. The offense stalled, the reads got slower, the decisions felt forced. And the deeper you go into those games, the more uncomfortable the question becomes. Why does this keep happening? Because at some point you can't blame matchups anymore. You can't just say it was a bad shooting night. You can't call it random. There's something underneath it. Watch the possessions closely. Early in the series, everything flows. Shai probes, waits, reads. Teammates move without the ball. The spacing stretches the defense just enough. But in game 3, that patience starts to disappear. The first read isn't there, and instead of resetting, the possession speeds up. The second defender shows early, and instead of trusting the next pass, the ball stays. And that's where everything begins to shift, not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, dangerously. Because when a system is built on timing, on trust, on spacing, even a small disruption changes everything. A pass that comes half a second late, a cut that's just a step off, a hesitation that wasn't there before. It doesn't look like a mistake, but it breaks the rhythm. And once the rhythm is gone, the defense doesn't need to do anything special anymore. They just need to stay solid. That's what makes this so hard to fix. Because the problem isn't obvious. It doesn't show up as a turnover. It doesn't show up as a missed assignment. It shows up as a feeling. Something just feels off. And when that feeling spreads through a team, especially in a high pressure moment like game 3, it compounds. One rush possession leads to another. One forced shot leads to another. And before you realize it, you're playing a different game. Not your game, their game. So what if the problem wasn't the defense? What if all those adjustments, all those bodies in the paint, all that pressure were just exposing something that was already happening? Because once you start asking that question, everything changes. Everyone blamed the defense, the schemes, the size, the physicality. And yes, those things mattered, but they weren't the root of the problem. The truth is, the problem was coming from inside. It was in the way the Thunder drifted away from who they were. This team is built on movement, on trust, on letting the game come to them. But in those game 3 moments, that identity started to crack. Instead of letting the defense react, they started reacting first. Instead of creating space, they started forcing it. And most importantly, instead of trusting the system, they started trusting urgency. That's the shift. That's the moment everything flips. Because urgency feels right in the moment. It feels like you're doing something, like you're taking control. But for a team like this, urgency is the enemy. It speeds up decisions that are supposed to be slow. It turns reads into guesses. And it puts the ball in places it was never meant to go. For Shai, that's everything. His entire game is built on patience, on control, on making defenders commit before he does anything. But when the system around him speeds up, he has to compensate. He has to create something out of nothing. And that's when even the best players in the world start to look human. Not because they're not good enough, but because they're playing a game that doesn't fit them anymore. Think about it like this. It's not that the defense figured him out. It's that the game he was forced to play in game 3 wasn't his game. And once you see it that way, all these losses start to make sense. They weren't random. They were predictable. They were the result of a system drifting away from its core under pressure. But here's the part nobody expected. In this game 3, none of that happened. They didn't speed up. They didn't panic. They didn't drift. They stayed exactly who they were. And if you've watched enough playoff basketball, you know how rare that is. So here's what I want to know. Do you think this was a one-game adjustment? Or is this the version of Shai and the Thunder we're going to see for the rest of this run? Because if it's the second option, then what we're watching right now might be a lot bigger than just fixing game 3. In game 3 this time, they didn't panic, they didn't rush, they stayed exactly who they were. You could see it from the first few possessions. The ball moved side to side, the spacing held. Cuts happened on time, not early, not late. Every action looked like it belonged. And most importantly, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander never looked like he was forcing anything. He didn't come out hunting shots. He didn't try to prove a point. He didn't try to erase the past in one quarter. He just played, probe, pause, read, attack. And when the defense shifted, the ball moved. That's the difference. Because before, when the help came early, the possession would speed up. Now it slowed down. The extra defender became an opportunity, not a problem. That's how you break a defense. Not by overpowering it, but by staying one step ahead of its intention. Watch how the spacing held even under pressure. When Shai drove, teammates didn't freeze, they didn't crowd his space. They drifted into the exact gaps the defense created, corner filled, wing lifted, dunker spot timed perfectly. So when the help collapsed, the pass was already waiting. And that's why the numbers look so clean. High efficiency, low wasted motion. Every touch had purpose. But here's the key part, none of that required a new skill. Shai didn't suddenly become a better shooter overnight. He didn't unlock a new move. He didn't change his body or his speed. He changed his timing. That's it. He let the game come to him even when the moment tried to pull him forward. And that sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do in playoff basketball. Because the deeper you go, the louder everything gets. The crowd, the expectations, the pressure to close. And that's exactly when most players start to rush. That's when they try to take control. That's when they drift away from what got them there. But in this game, Shai did the opposite. He trusted the possession. He trusted the next pass. He trusted that if he stayed patient, the defense would eventually give him something. And it did, over and over again. Now look at the second layer. The bench. This is where the change becomes undeniable. Because before, when the rhythm broke, role players disappeared. They hesitated. They passed up shots. They played like they were trying not to mess up. In this game, they were ready. Cold minutes. Big moments, no hesitation, catch and shoot, attack the closeout. Make the next read. That's not just confidence, that's structure. That's a system working exactly the way it's supposed to. And it feeds back into Shai, because when your teammates are decisive, you don't have to overcompensate. You don't have to create everything yourself, you just have to keep the engine running. And that's exactly what he did. Every possession felt connected. Every decision felt aligned. Nothing forced, nothing rushed, just control. And when a team reaches that level of control, the defense runs out of answers. Because you can't speed them up. You can't bait them into mistakes. You can't push them out of their identity. That's when a good team becomes dangerous. And that's when a great player becomes inevitable. So the real reason Shai fixed his biggest problem was never about scoring. It was about discipline. About staying present when everything around you is trying to pull you out of the moment. About trusting a system even when the pressure tells you to break it. And once that clicked, everything else followed. The efficiency, the control, the dominance, all of it came from that one shift, and here's why that matters. Because Game 3 used to be the point where things fell apart. Now it might be the point where they separate, where they prove they can handle the pressure that used to break them, where they show they're not just talented, but complete. And if that's true, then this isn't just a nice win, this is a warning. Because if this version of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander stays consistent, if this level of patience holds, if this system doesn't crack under pressure again, then the Oklahoma City Thunder are not just a fun story. They're a real problem for the entire league, not because they overwhelm you, but because they don't break. And that's a different kind of threat. So now the question changes. It's no longer about whether Shai can fix his weaknesses. He just did. The real question is what happens when the rest of the league realizes it too. Because once they do, everything shifts. And if you want to see how far this version of Shai can go and what it means for the rest of the playoffs, stay with this channel because the next chapter of this story is already starting.